The night sky over the Pacific was calm. Too calm. Flight 739 Dreamun's Air was cruising at 36,000 feet on its routine route from Honolulu to San Francisco. 183 passengers slept soundly beneath the soft hum of the engines. The captain had set the autopilot. The co-pilot was reviewing the weather radar. And everything was normal until it wasn't. In the cabin, flight attendant Ava Collins checked the overhead bins one last time. She was new to Dreamun's, only 6 months in, but already known for her calm nature and sharp instincts. When turbulence hit earlier, she was the first to steady an elderly passenger's trembling hands. At 02:14 a.m., a sudden bang echoed from the left wing. The aircraft shuddered. Lights flickered. Then silence. Both engines went out. The cockpit alarm screamed, "Mayday! Mayday! Dreamun 739, we've lost both engines." Captain Reynolds shouted into the radio. But the ocean below was an endless void and their altitude was dropping fast. In the cabin, panic spread like wildfire. People screamed. Mothers held their children. Prayers filled the air. But Ava, she didn't freeze. She moved, she ran to the intercom. "Everyone stay calm. Fasten your seatbelts and keep your heads down." Her voice cut through the chaos like steel through glass. The plane began gliding, powerless. The captain tried restarting the engines, nothing. The ocean was rushing up toward them, then Ava saw something no one else noticed. The flicker of light from a small island on the radar map she'd once studied during training. It was uninhabited but flat enough for a landing. She burst into the cockpit. "Captain, there's a small island 20 miles northeast. If we turn now, we can glide it out there." Reynolds looked at her, shocked, desperate, and nodded, turning northeast. "Hold on!" The aircraft groaned under pressure. The passengers cried. But Ava kept walking down the aisle, tightening belts, whispering, "You're going to be okay." Minutes felt like hours. The ocean loomed closer. "Brace, brace!" the captain yelled. When they hit, it wasn't the end, it was the beginning. Ava's world went black for a second. Then sound rushed back. The cries, the smell of smoke, the freezing salt water pouring in. The Dreamun's had crash-landed half in the shallows near that tiny island, and somehow, miraculously, she was still alive. She looked around at the survivors, 83 souls who now looked to her, not as a flight attendant, but as their only hope. The morning sun broke over the wreckage of Flight 739. Smoke rose in thin columns from the torn fuselage, and the once silver Dreamun's jet now lay broken across the shallow reef. But there was life, voices, movement, and determination. Ava Collins dragged another passenger from the flooded rear cabin. Her uniform was torn, her hands bleeding, but she didn't stop. 183 people were alive, bruised, cold, terrified, yet still alive because of her quick thinking. "Captain Reynolds is stable," shouted one of the crew members. "Good," Ava gasped, tying off a makeshift bandage. "We need to build a fire and signal the rescue team." The passengers watched her, some whispering prayers, some crying, others staring at the woman who had refused to give up when everything seemed lost. By noon, Ava had organized small groups, some for medical care, some to collect supplies washing ashore, others to signal planes. She moved like a leader, not by rank, but by instinct. Then far above, a faint roar echoed. Ava froze. Everyone looked up. A fighter jet cut across the sky, sleek, silver, unmistakable. "Is that an F-22? A passenger whispered. Ava grabbed a metal panel reflecting sunlight in short bursts. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. SOS for a moment. Nothing. Then, the jet banked hard, descending lower. Over the emergency radio, a crackle broke the static. "Unidentified downed aircraft. This is Eagle 2 of the U.S. Air Force. We've got visuals. Hold position." Tears filled Ava's eyes. They were found. Within hours, rescue helicopters arrived. The survivors cheered as they were lifted one by one. When Ava was the last to board, she turned back toward the broken Dreamun's jet, the plane that almost became their grave, and whispered, "Thank you for holding on." 3 days later, at Andrews Air Force Base, a small ceremony was held for the Dreamun 739 survivors. Journalists waited outside. Inside silence, Ava stood in her flight uniform again, facing a row of Air Force officers. The same F-22 pilot who had spotted their signal stepped forward. Removing his helmet, "Ma'am," he said with a faint smile, We don't usually do this, but there's something you should hear. He turned toward the radio tower operator. A voice came through the speakers. Deep, steady official. Attention all units. This is Eagle Command confirmed rescue of Dreamun's Flight 739. Survival credit, Ava Collins. Call sign Phoenix. The room fell silent. Ava blinked in disbelief. Phoenix, she whispered. The pilot smiled. You rose from the crash and brought everyone with you? The name fits. Outside, cameras flashed. But Ava wasn't thinking about fame or headlines. She was thinking of the ocean, the fear, the strength it took to rise again. And the moment the F-22 spoke her call, sign for the world to hear, Phoenix, the one who saved 183 souls and came back stronger. 3 weeks had passed since the rescue. The world knew her name now. Ava Collins, the flight attendant who saved 183 souls. News outlets called her the miracle of the Pacific. But behind the headlines, behind the calm smile she wore in interviews, Ava was still waking up every night to the same sound, that terrible metallic scream of the Dreamun's aircraft as it hit the water. The world called her a hero, but she just felt human, fragile, and searching. After the ceremony at Andrews Air Force Base, Ava had returned to San Diego to recover. The airline offered her leave, therapy, even a book deal. She declined all of it. She didn't want to talk. She wanted to breathe again. Every evening she'd walk to the cliffs above the ocean, where the sky burned orange and gold, and watch the jets that flew past in formation. The roar of engines, once terrifying, had become strangely comforting. It reminded her that the sky, like her, could heal. One of those evenings she heard a familiar sound, deep, smooth, powerful, an F-22 Raptor slicing through the clouds. The sun caught the metallic wings and her heart gave a quiet, unexplainable ache. She didn't notice the black car pull up behind her until a voice said, "You know, you wave at planes like someone who's been up there." Ava turned. It was Captain Ryan Hale, the same F-22 pilot who had found them weeks ago. His uniform jacket hung casually over his shoulder, his smile soft but unsure. "I wasn't sure you'd remember me," he said. She smiled faintly. "Hard to forget the man who called me Phoenix over the radio." He laughed quietly. "That wasn't my call. The brass came up with it. But it fits." They stood in silence for a moment, the ocean wind tugging at her hair. The world around them felt lighter, like the noise had finally faded. "Mind if I walk with you?" he asked. "Sure," she replied. They walked along the cliff trail, two survivors of different skies. She told him about the nightmares, the guilt, the faces she couldn't forget. He told her about his own fears, how even a fighter pilot trained for war sometimes froze at the thought of real loss. "There's something about surviving," Ryan said quietly. "It makes you question why you were the one who made it." Ava nodded. "Every morning. But then I remember their faces. That's why I keep walking." He looked at her, truly seeing her, the quiet strength behind her gentle tone. "You know," he said, "when I saw your signal from up there, I didn't think it was a flare. I thought it was hope flashing back at me." Ava smiled, but her eyes glistened. "Hope's easy to lose, harder to find again." Ryan looked toward the horizon. "Then maybe we can help each other find it." That night, Ava went home feeling something she hadn't in weeks. Warmth. Not the blinding rush of fame or gratitude, but the simple, quiet comfort of being understood. The next few days turned into a rhythm. Ryan would stop by after his shifts at the base. They'd talk, laugh, and sometimes sit in silence and just watching the sunset. Slowly, the nightmares began to fade. The sound of engines no longer haunted her. It reminded her of him. One afternoon, Ryan handed her a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" she asked. "An invitation," he said. "Base open day. I thought you might like to see what the inside of an F-22 looks like, without all the panic this time." She laughed. "You're sure they'll let a civilian in?" "For Phoenix," he smiled. "They'll roll out the red carpet." When she arrived at the base 2 days later, she wasn't prepared for the emotion that hit her. The hangars stretched wide and clean under the sun, the scent of jet fuel and heat mixing with the wind. Everywhere she looked, men and women in uniform saluted her as she passed. "Ma'am," one young pilot said, eyes full of admiration. "It's an honor." Ava felt her cheeks warm. "I'm no hero, Lieutenant. Maybe not, he said with a grin, but you gave us a story worth flying for. Ryan was waiting near his jet, sleek, dark, magnificent. He held out his hand. Ready for the sky again? She hesitated, staring at the cockpit. Memories flashed, falling, screaming, the ocean rushing up, but then she met his eyes, steady, kind, real. She took his hand. Ready.